All right, welcome to video number 2 of Mean Stack Front to Back. In the last video, or the first video actually, I just kind of gave you an introduction into what we're going to be doing, what we're going to be building. We're going to start off with building an authentication app. Okay, we're going to do the back end first using Node and Express, and then we'll move on to the Angular 2 front end. Now, before you get started, the two things that you absolutely need to have is Node.js installed. If you don't have that, just go to nodejs.org, or you can use your package manager, however you want to install it. And I do have videos on my channel that show you how to do that. If I would suggest watching the Node for absolute beginners if you need help getting that set up. But honestly, if you don't know how to get Node.js set up, you probably shouldn't be starting with this video because you're going to get confused. You also need MongoDB installed locally. I would suggest watching MongoDB in 30 minutes if you don't know how to do that. Okay, so just make sure you have those two things installed on your system before you even attempt to do this project. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and open up the terminal here. And I have 3 windows open. These 2 are in the My Projects folder, and then this is the Mongo shell. Okay, so once you get MongoDB installed, you want to, well, you don't have to open the shell, but I like to have it open. If you're on Ubuntu or any Linux distribution, you want to make sure your MongoDB service is running. So to do that, you can do sudo service mongod start. Okay, so you need to do that and then just put in your password. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to generate our package.json file. So we need to create a folder for our project. So I'm going to say make dir, and let's call this mean auth app. And then I'm just going to cd into that. Okay, and then we'll do npm init, and that'll help us create a package.json file. So let's just enter through this version. That's fine. Description, we'll say mean stack authentication app, and the entry point I'm going to choose app.js. Okay, author, you can put your own name. Is this okay? Yes, it is. Okay, so let's open it up. Let's open that folder up in the text editor. I'm using Atom, but of course you can use whatever you'd like. I'm going to add a project folder, and I want mean auth app. Okay, so here's our package.json file. Now I just want to add a start script here, so that the reason we do this is so the user doesn't have to do whatever the main entry point, in this case node, it would be node app to run it. So we just want to say that right here. That way they can just do npm start. Alright, but we're going to use nodemon anyways, which will run our application and make it so that we don't have to keep stopping and starting the server every time we make a change. Alright, now under that scripts, we're going to do our dependencies. Okay, so we're going to need a bunch of stuff here. So we need Express, and we're just going to install the latest version of all these. Okay, we also need Mongoos. Mongoos is going to be our object document mapper to work with MongoDB. We also want bcrypt, and we're going to use BCryptjs because with the standard bcrypt package, there's a whole bunch of dependencies, and I always have issues with it. So we're going to use the BCryptjs version, which is much easier. All right, let's see, what else do we need? We want the cores module so that we can make requests from our front end, even if it's on a different port. We're going to need JSON web token, and that's going to make it so that we can generate a JWT token so that we can have authentication for specific routes. We also want body parser, which is pretty standard. And then we want passport. And then there's a bunch of different passport packages. We want passport-JWT. Okay, so that'll allow us to create a login strategy that uses web tokens. Okay, so that should do it. Make sure you put a comma right here. And let's go ahead and save that. Okay, so now we're going to go over and we're going to run npm install. And that should set up all of those dependencies for us. Okay, so that's that. Now let's go ahead and we can close this up. And let's create our app.js file. Okay, so this is our main server entry point file. And the first thing we want to do is bring in all the modules that we want. So let's bring in express. Say require express. We're also going to use the path module. Okay, now the path we didn't install with our dependencies because it's a core module, so we don't need to do that. All right, let's bring in body parser. Okay, we're going to want, let's see what else, cores. And let's bring in passport. And Mongoose. And that should do it for now. Okay, so next thing we want to do is initialize our app variable with express. Okay, let's also create a variable for the port we want to use. I'm going to choose 3000, but you can use whatever you like. And then let's take that app variable and we'll call listen, which is going to listen on whatever port we pass in. So we'll pass in our variable. And then we can use a callback. Now you can just do function like that, but I'm actually going to use arrow functions. I prefer to use those, so we're just going to do like that. Okay, and then let's just do console.log, and we'll say server started on port, and then we'll just concatenate that port number. Okay, so let's save that, and then just this code here should let us run the server. So let's go over here and say npm start, because remember we added that start script, and now we're started on port 3000. Okay, so if we go over here and we say localhost port 3000, we're going to get this cannot get slash, and we're getting that because there is no route to the home page to slash. So just to get rid of that, I'll just create a route. This is, you know, when we're done, this URL is going to go to our front end index file, but for now we'll just put a route there. So we'll say app get and slash, and then our callback, which is going to take in request response, and let's just do res.send. We'll just send some text and we'll say invalid endpoint. Okay, now if I go and reload, it's not going to change. That's because we have to restart the server. Now there's a module that I'm going to install globally so that we can just run it and we can make changes and it'll automatically update, and that's called nodemon. So for that you want to do, I have to do sudo because I'm in Linux Ubuntu, and we're going to do npm install -g for global, and then nodemon. Okay, I would suggest always using this. I use it with every application. All right, so then we just have to do nodemon. Okay, so then it will watch our app, and when we make changes, it'll update. So now we get our invalid endpoint, which is what we want so far. So code up to this point, we're bringing in all of our dependencies. We're initializing our app variable with express. We're putting the port into, we're putting the number into the port variable. We have one route to the home page, which we're just sending out some text saying it's invalid. That's not going to be used on the back end. And then we're just calling the listen function, which takes a port and starts up our server. So that's what we have so far. Now I want to just add in our cores middleware so that we can use that. And what that does is it allows us to make a request to our API from a different domain name, okay? Because by default, they would get blocked if they tried to do certain requests. So you can set it up without using this module. In fact, I guess I'll show you that. So let's say express cores. And I think this is it. Yeah. So if you don't want to use that cores module, you could do this. You could just add your own middleware. We're just saying app.use, so we can add a function here. Takes in a request, response, and next. And then we're setting a header, res.header, and we're saying we want to allow access from any domain. That's what this is. You could put specific domain names or ports in here as well. And then this right here is just saying we'll accept it if it has a content type header. And then you can also specify, it doesn't say it here, but you can specify what requests you want, whether it's, if you want to accept delete and put requests, get, posts, and so on. But the cores module makes it so that we don't have to do that. So if we take a look at this, we required it already, so all we have to do is put in this app.use cores, and it does it for us. Okay, so we can just put that right here. Now there are options for this. If you want to take a look at this page, for instance, if you want to enable cores on a single route, you could do that. You can see right here, they're just including it in the app.get. You can also add some configuration options here. You can set the origin, the success status, dynamic origin. There's a bunch of stuff you can do. Some of it I don't understand, but that's all we need is that one line, because we're making this public so that any domain can access it, but we're going to have authentication so that we can basically disable some routes if the user doesn't send along the correct token. So let's move on to the rest of the middleware that we're going to need. So body parser takes some middleware. And what body parser does is it parses incoming request bodies. So when you submit a form or something like that, you can grab the data. So we just need to enable body parser.json. So we'll put that right under the cores. Let's put a comment here. Say body parser middleware. Okay, so we want to do app.use. And in here we just want to say body parser, bodyparser.json. Should add some comments here as well. Port number. And then this is just index route start server. Now we're going to use the express router because all the user routes I want to put in a separate file. I don't want to stick them here. So let's include that file up here. So we can do const users, and let's set that to require, and it's going to be in a folder called routes. Whoops, routes/users. All right, and then let's go down here and let's do app.use, and I'm going to have this go to /users and then just pass in that users variable. So anything that is, localhost 3000 /users /whatever will go to that users file. Okay. So let's create that. We'll save this file, and then we're going to create a new folder called routes. And inside there, let's create a new file called users.js. Okay, this is going to be all of our users' routes. So we want to bring in express. Okay, and then we also want to bring in the router. We'll say const router equals express express.router, like that. Okay, and then let's put in, for instance, the register route, so that we can take router.get. So instead of app.get, now it's router.get. And we want it to go to users/register. Okay, since we're using this users file, when we do this, we don't want to put in /users/register. It's automatically going to put that in, so just do that. Okay, and then we'll put our callback, and we'll say request response next. Oh. And just to test it out, we'll say res.send register. Okay, so if we save that and we go to users/register, let's see, what did I do? Router.use. Oh, we didn't export it. So down at the bottom here, you want to do module.exports and set that to router. We want to export the router. Okay, so now it should work. Okay, so now we get our register. So we might as well create the rest of the routes because we really don't have that many. So we'll have a register, we'll have our authenticate, okay, change this, and let's see what else we're going to have. We're going to have a profile route, and this is one of the routes we're going to protect with our authentication with our token. Okay, so this will be profile, and let's change this to profile. Okay, and then let's see. I also want to have a validate route so that if we want, we can check that way to see if the user, if their token matches. I can't remember if I actually used this route or not, but we'll create it anyway. Okay, so that's all we need for now, so let's save that, and then we should be able to go to, for instance, users, oops, I spell that right, authenticate, and profile. Okay, so we have our users routes. Let's set the static folder. So we need a place to put our client-side files, and that's going to be our entire Angular 2 app when we're done with it. So we're going to set that. So I'm going to go right here, and let's say set static folder file, and we'll do app.use, and let's see, we're going to pass in express.static, and in there we're going to use the path module so that we can join, we want to join current directory, and here is where we put what we want to call that folder. I'm going to call it public. You could call it client or whatever you'd like. So we'll save that, and then let's create a folder called public. Whoops, yeah, public. And if we were to put in here an index.html and go to our root, you can see that's what's loading. Say hello. Hello, okay. But I'm going to delete that for now. We don't need it right now. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we want to call the connect function for Mongoose so we can connect to our database. So let's go right here, and we're going to take that Mongoose variable and we're going to call connect. Now, right here is where we need to put the location of the database, but what I'm going to do is create a config file, and we can put the database in that. So let's go over here and create a new folder called config. Okay, and then we're going to create a file called database.js, and in here we want to put module.exports, and we're going to set that to an object, and we're going to have a database value here, which is going to be MongoDB localhost, and we want to put in Mongo's default port, which is 27017, and then slash the name of our database. So I'm going to call this mean auth. Okay, now this is also where we want to put the secret for our token. Okay, you need to define a secret, which is just, it can be anything. I'm just going to say your secret. Okay, and you can change that if you'd like. So let's save that. And then what we need to do is require it in our app.js file. So we'll go right here and say const config and set that to require. And let's see, we're going to go dots, we need our quotes, and then dot slash config slash database. And then right here we can just say config dot database. That's what I called it, right? Yep, whatever you put here. So now what I want to do is just put in something so that it'll let us know if we're connected. So we're going to say mongoose dot connection dot on, and we want to say on connected, and then we can put a callback. I'm going to use an arrow function, and in here let's say console.log, and we'll say connected to database, and then let's go config.database. Okay, so let's save that. And now if we go over to the console, you'll see that we're connected to the database. I'm just going to put some comments in here. Okay, now we can also put in we can check to see if there's an error, if there's a database error, and to let us know what that is if there is one. So we'll just change connected to error, and that's going to take a parameter, and let's just say database error, and then we'll just put that error in, whatever it is. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and stop here for this video, and we'll continue in the next. Now let's go over this real quick, what we've done. So we brought in all of our dependencies. We're connecting to our Mongo database. We have the database stored in a config file. We're checking for connection for an error and then just logging that. We're initializing Express. We're bringing in our users folder from the routes folder, which has our user routes. We have the port number. We're calling our cores middleware, setting our static folder to public, bringing in our body parser middleware. Here we're saying we want to use /users for all of our user routes. We have our index route here just to let the user know it's invalid, and then we're starting our server. Okay, and then in our routes, we're bringing in the Express router. We're using that to define our routes, just a bunch of get routes. Actually, you know what? Authenticate should be post. Okay, authenticate should be post. So we have our routes. We're exporting the router, and let's see what else. We have our public folder. We have our config, our database config file with the database name, our location, and our secret. And that's pretty much it. Okay, so in the next video, what we're going to do is create our Mongoose model for the user. We're going to specify the fields. We're also going to encapsulate all the database functionality within that model file. A lot of times people will put it in their route, but we're going to have everything centralized into that one model file, and we'll call those functions from our route. Okay. We'll also implement password encryption so that when the user registers, their password will be encrypted. And of course, we're going to implement passport, which is going to handle the whole token process, along with the JSON web token module. Okay, so that's it for now. Please subscribe to keep these videos coming, and hopefully you're coding along with me. and I'll see you next time.